Hi everyone, we hope you're enjoying the Masters of Product Marketing so far. Just before we jump into the next session, I want to share some info on a few of the leadership-focused resources we have been working on improving here at PMA. As you know, we're dedicated to elevating the role of product marketing. But as the function grows, we have been focusing on how to develop the best product marketing leaders for now and the near future. Two exciting ways we have been doing this is through our Product Marketing Certified Leadership course and our PMA Exec Membership Plan. Our leadership certification will equip you with the insider knowledge you need to create a lasting, successful career as a product marketing leader. Through this course, we'll equip you with the fundamental skills required to guide your team with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. And now for the PMA Exec Membership Plan. This gives you all the benefits of our awesome Pro Plan in addition to our exclusive leadership community, even more strategic templates and frameworks, leadership peer councils, monthly masterminds, a recruitment hub, and a whole lot more. We'll be sharing more details on these throughout the event, but if you want to chat in more depth, then why not reach out to one of the team through the PMA Slack community. But for now, we're on to the next talk.
Hello, my fellow product marketers around the world. I'm Pedro Bordikian, and I'm super pumped to have this conversation about storytelling with all of you. I consider storytelling a big force in my career as a PMM, and I always like to take the stage, early on delivering some product demos, and today talking more about our product vision, but always with passion and curiosity about storytelling. That has helped me a lot, and today I will share some thoughts of how I approach it. But before we begin, I created this case study based on this TED Talk. If you haven't watched it yet, please do. You will get much more value out of the session. There is a link here, and it's really funny. Number two, I based this presentation on my favorite storytelling books. We'll have time today to focus just on the first three, but you should go and read them all. But reading is not enough. There is a lot of people reading these books and a lot of people watching presentations like this one. In my experience, the PMMs who really excel in storytelling are the ones who keep these books close. They are constantly consulting them, rereading them, applying what they learn every day. It's a constant exercise. And with time, you find the frameworks you like the most for different situations. And eventually, you create your own, borrowing a little bit from each one of them. And that's when the magic happens. Great. So let's get started. We are going to dissect the most important storytelling devices of this talk. My first question to you is, what do you think is powerful about the way the presenter is opening this narrative? Let's listen.
When I was 7 years old and my sister was just 5 years old, we were playing on top of a bunk bed.
When you start your narrative, it's like you have a permission. It's like you have the opportunity to put VR goggles on your audience. You need to invite them to embark on this adventure with you and share your worldview. People are wired to listen to story. It's how we survived as a species, sharing knowledge from generation to generation through stories shared sitting by the fire. A good example of how stories help us to think about a subject. It's the legend of the apple falling on Isaac Newton's head, which paints a picture that invites us to learn more. That's why teachers around the world start with the apple story and not with the particles attract each other with a force that is directly proportional to the product of their masses, right? You will need to talk about the particles later, but first you need the apple falling on a head to paint a picture and invite the audience to stick around, to invite them to learn more. But there is more. Let's listen.
So I did the only thing my little frantic 7-year-old brain could think to do to avert this tragedy. If you have children, you've seen this hundreds of times before. I said, Amy, wait, don't cry, don't cry. Did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. Amy, I think this means you're a unicorn.
If you take away one thing from this presentation, remember the concept of framing. To win your audience, you need to control the narrative frame. People receiving your message have different frames in their minds. For example, price might be top of mind for your audience, while you are actually interested in highlighting the superior quality of your product. So from the beginning, you need to establish the worldview that will favor the point you want to make. Chekhov, the brilliant Russian writer, said that if you show a knife in the first act, you have to use it in the third act. And I'll add that, and vice versa. It's the opening that sets the path for your narrative to resonate with people. And if you walk off the path, that's when people go, I'm not sure I'm so excited about this story. Okay. In this TED Talk, the opening does a very subtle but brilliant thing. It's framing the story to be about human nature. This talk is about a science research. It could be full of data and use the analytical frame, but he's not talking to a technical audience. So when the presenter says things like, if you have kids, you have seen this before, he's inviting the audience to trust what they know to be true versus the need to be convinced by research data, what could be really boring to this audience. That's very intentional. And pay attention how he will stay on this path for the course of the presentation. So let's move into the second act of this narrative. Let's see how he makes his case.
When I first started talking about this research outside of academia, out with companies and schools, the very first thing they said to never do is to start your talk with a graph. The very first thing I wanted to do is start my talk with a graph. This graph looks boring, but this graph is the reason that I get excited and wake up every morning. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is
we all receive more messages than our brains can process. So being unexpected, it's a great tactic for people to pay attention. For example, most people tune out when they listen to the Save It message in the airplane, right? But if the flight attendant changes the script and says something like, there are more than 50 ways to leave your lover behind, but only 3 out of this airplane, people will notice, and it's more likely that they will remember. This is connected to how our brains work. If you want to get people to consider what you have to say, you need to get your message to the neocortex, which is the more rational part of our brain. But first, the message needs to go through the reptilian brain, the one responsible for the fight or flight behavior. If something's unexpected, it may be a threat, so we need to pay attention. And when you use humor, like the presenter did, you show your audience and your reptilian brain that you're not a threat. So they lower their defenses and get open to what you have to say. And it's not only humor, there are different tactics that you can use. You can show your vulnerability, for example. There's different ways to do. What's important is to put your audience at ease and show you're not a threat. Let's look at another example.
I have a brother-in-law named Bobo, which is a whole nother story. Bobo married Amy the unicorn. Bobo called me on the phone from Yale Medical School. And Bobo said, Sean, I have leprosy. Which even at Yale is extraordinarily rare. But I had no idea how to console poor Bobo because he had just gotten over an entire week of menopause. See, what we're finding is not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And if we can change the lens, not only can we change your happiness, we can change every single educational and business outcome at the same time. When I applied...
This is the second most important concept of this presentation. A good story has armature. I find Steven Spielberg one of my favorite storytellers. He's so good, and in his movie Jaws, the main character, from the beginning, it's always afraid of the water. And this notion of conquering his internal fears, it's what connects the whole movie together. The shark, it's really a great external representation of his internal fears. The same thing goes with E.T. The boy who is the main character, it's initially very selfish, and he wants to keep E.T. for himself. And the whole movie is about how he evolves to learn how to care for others. In this TED Talk, all the anecdotes that the speaker uses help to build this notion that it's not reality that shapes us, it's how we view the world that shapes our reality. It's both his main point and the connecting tissue throughout the presentation, and that's a very good best practice. Another great example that we can see is the power of simplicity. As PMMs, we often need to communicate complex technical details, but the more skillful we are, the better we get at simplifying the message. For example, a school principal could say, the landscape around the coronavirus continues to be uncertain, impacting the school district operations. When all that people really needed to hear was, schools are closed until fall. The presenter here does it super well by using terms that are easy to understand, and he explains in plain language that it's not the word that shapes you, it's you who shape the word. Let's see more.
What we found is that only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat.
We all know that we need to use proof points to make our presentation credible, but one of the most common mistakes is to overdo it. The more stats you use, the more you dilute their value. Focus on the point that is most connected to what? To your armature. Your numbers are there to support the point that you're making, not to be the main star of the show. The presenter does this really well, right? By highlighting the one thing that is most important for his talk, which is only 25% of job success is predicted by IQ. And here there is a screenshot that he also uses with some scientific papers that support his point. When you use proof points to make your story credible, one of the frames you can also use is the power frame, which comes from authority. The citation of the research papers borrows the power of the credibility from the scientific papers and publications. In my job, I always tell my team that when it's hard to get consensus for a pitch deck, for a narrative, the power frame that I like the most is the endorsement of clients. When we show to the organization that we have tested a narrative with important clients and the message resonates, that's usually a very compelling argument in a customer-focused organization. Now, the third act of this narrative, let's go and look at the closing.
Allowing you to adapt to the world in a different way. We found that there are ways you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully.
We all like to give clear call to actions when we close our stories. We just need to make sure that the call to actions is presented in your audience perspective, not yours. It's less about go do this and more about what you can get if you do this. And the more personal you make this to the audience, the better. A good example is this campaign in Texas to prevent littering. It says, don't mess with Texas. So if I love Texas, I won't litter because what I love is at stake. So the speaker in the closing make this benefit for the audience very clear. We live in a crazy world, but if you do what I'm telling you, you will adapt and respond to any circumstance or headwinds that life throws at you. And the less abstract and the more concrete you can be in your call to actions, the better. Imagine that you are making an ask to your marketing or support organization. Instead of asking them, we need to deliver exceptional customer care to our clients, maybe you can try, let's accept returns even if the product is not damaged. In this presentation, the presenter was very clear in his ending about the 3 practical things that people can do every day. Thank you so much for watching this case study. I hope some of it was useful, and I want to close reinforcing that all these techniques take practice and will only work well when you deeply know your audience, so you know what's their current worldview, what's the framing that you need to use with them, how can I create an emotional connection. This takes a lot of prep and a lot of work. Finally, I want to share something that I learned from my dear storytelling and life mentor, Percival Caropreso, who says that our responsibility is the size of our privilege. Again, our responsibility is the size of our privilege. We all reach and influence so many people with our stories. Make sure that they are inclusive and they are leading to actions that make the world a better place. And my shameless plug, this is an example of how I try to use my storytelling skill to spread a message that I believe to be important. It's a kid's book about how diversity makes us stronger and happier. And you can find that on Amazon, and you may see how I use some of the techniques that I discuss here today in the book. And if you have kids, I hope they enjoy it. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. Let's jump into questions if you have any, and if you want to connect or have any feedback how we can make this presentation better, please feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Here it's the link for my profile, is the best way to reach me. Thank you all so much.